All right, welcome. Today, we're diving into a linguistic puzzle that's going to flip everything you think you know about sentences right on its head. We are going to crack the code of Sanskrit grammar.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. We're basically going on a little journey to solve a mystery that has fascinated linguists for, well, centuries. And the central question is almost ridiculously simple. But the answer? Well, the answer reveals a completely different way of building meaning with words.
And here it is. This is the heart of the puzzle. For most of us, in a language like English, if you jumble up the words, you jumble up the meaning, it's a mess. So how on earth can a complex, ancient language like Sanskrit just throw that rule out the window?
Okay, so this slide just lays it all out, plain and simple. Over on the left, in English, dog bites man is, just another Tuesday. But swap two words around to get man bites dog, and it's a whole different story. It's a headline. The meaning is completely different. But now look at the right. You can shuffle these Sanskrit words around in pretty much any order you want, and the meaning stays exactly the same. Rama goes to the village. I mean, that should be impossible, right? Unless the code isn't where we think it is.
And that right there, that is our first big clue. The secret to unlocking a Sanskrit sentence has nothing to do with the position of the words. It's all about the form of the words themselves. The information is literally baked right into them.
So this gets us to a really key idea. Sanskrit is what linguists call a highly synthetic language. Now that sounds complicated, but all it really means is that a word's grammatical job, is it the subject doing the action or the object receiving it, is shown by special little endings that are tacked onto it, not by where it's sitting in the sentence.
A great way to think about it is like this. Every single word in a Sanskrit sentence shows up wearing its own name badge. And on that badge is a crystal clear job description. You don't need to know where it's standing. You just glance at its badge and you know exactly what its role is. No guesswork needed.
So what's written on that job description? Well, for nouns and pronouns, each ending packs in 3 critical bits of info. First up, you've got case, which is basically its job title. Then you've got number, which tells you if we're talking about one thing, two things, or more than two. And yep, even the gender is coded right in there.
And if you thought that was cool, get this. The verbs are even more of a powerhouse. A single verb ending in Sanskrit tells you who is doing the action, how many of them there are, when it's happening, and even if it's active or passive. I mean, it's pretty much a whole sentence worth of info, all crammed into one single word. Incredible.
All right, so enough with the theory, right? Let's actually put this to the test and see how this code cracking works in the real world with an actual sentence.
Okay, so to crack any sentence, you've got this 4-step playbook. First, you just break the sentence down into its individual words. Simple enough. Second, you find the core meaning of each word, its stem. Third, and this is the magic step, you look at the endings to figure out each word's specific job. And finally, you just link them all together based on those jobs.
So we're going to go back to our example sentence, Ramaha gramam gacchati. And our mission right now is to prove, without using word order at all, that this has to mean Rama goes to the village. Let's start with Ramaha. The stem is obviously Rama. But here's the kicker. It's that ending, that ha sound. That suffix is like a big red flag. It tells us loud and clear that this word is the nominative singular. In simple terms, this is our subject. He's the one doing the action. Period.
Okay, so what about the verb gacchati? How does it know it belongs to Rama? Well, its root, gum, means to go, and its ending, t, specifically tells us the action is being done by a third-person singular subject, right now. See? It's a perfect match for our subject, Ramaha. They're basically made for each other.
And that is the big aha moment. We didn't need word order at all. The ending on Rama told us he was the subject, and the ending on gacchati confirmed that a single third person was doing the action of going. It's like a puzzle where the pieces can only fit together in one single way. The code is totally cracked.
Okay, so now that we've seen how to decode a sentence, let's zoom out for a second. It turns out that pretty much all the functional words in Sanskrit, all the building blocks, can be neatly sorted into just 3 main families.
Yep, that's it, just 3. These word types are called padas, and if you can get your head around these 3 categories, you're well on your way to understanding the whole grammatical landscape of the language. So here they are. First, you've got the Sabanta family. These are your bread and butter nouns, pronouns, and adjectives whose endings change.
Second, you have the tinganta family. These are your verbs, which change to show tense and who's doing the action. And then you've got this really interesting third group, the avyaya. These guys, adverbs, conjunctions, their form never ever changes. They're kind of like the unshakable pillars that the rest of the sentence is built around.
So why does all this matter? I mean, why are we getting so deep into this? Well, when you put Sanskrit into a global context, you start to see it's not just some linguistic oddball. It actually represents one extreme end of a whole spectrum of how languages can work. And you can really see that spectrum laid out right here. On one end of the scale, you've got a language like English called analytic, where rigid word order is king. Then as you move along, you see something like German, which is a bit of a hybrid. It has 4 noun cases, so its word order is a little more flexible. Then you get to Russian, which is highly synthetic with 6 cases and very flexible order. And then, all the way at the other end of the spectrum, you've got Sanskrit, with its 8 cases and extreme, almost total flexibility. So, if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this. To build meaning, English relies on word order. Sanskrit, on the other hand, relies on word form. They're just 2 fundamentally different strategies for getting a point across. And that leaves us with a final and honestly, a much deeper question to chew on. We've seen how Sanskrit works. But think about it. If your language builds meaning in these self-contained little packets of information, the words, instead of in a rigid linear sequence, how might that change the very way you think, the way you structure reality itself? It's a pretty mind-bending thought, isn't it?